Cold open. Picture this. A major carrier link goes dark during business hours, and at the same time, the building's generator takes longer than expected to transfer. Phone lines drop, access control panels lose cloud connectivity, and a few critical tenant services become intermittent. Who decides what fails over? Who tells the tenants? Those are decisions you want to find in rehearsal, not during the outage.
Welcome to Built, Wired, and Secured. I'm Alex Morgan. In today's episode, we're discussing the Building Tech Tabletop, rehearsing outages across ops, IT, and tenants, what it is, why it matters, and what decision makers need to know to avoid costly mistakes. Joining me today is Michael Harrington, who brings decades of operational experience running commercial properties and designing continuity plans. Michael, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Alex. Glad to be here. From an operational standpoint, these exercises expose the exact moments where assumptions meet reality and then break.
Segment 1. Designing the exercise. Michael, when a building owner asks, "Can we run a tabletop that fits into a lunch hour?" what are the must-have elements to make it worthwhile?
Short answer: scope, roles, and realistic scenarios. You need a one-sentence objective. For example, verify decision ownership and tenant notification for a simultaneous carrier and generator failure. Then pick two realistic scenarios that map to that objective: a carrier outage overlapping with delayed generator transfer, and a partial power transfer that impacts specific systems like access control and HVAC. Invite the people who make decisions: facilities, IT, security, vendor reps, and a tenant liaison, and give them explicit roles. Time box the session, 60 to 90 minutes, with a 10-minute pre-brief and a 10-minute after-action commitment to owners and deadlines.
So the objective drives the scenario selection, not the other way around. How granular should the technical detail be? Owners often worry about getting too deep into network or electrical minutia.
Keep technical detail just enough to force operational decisions. You don't need IP addresses or single-line diagrams on the table. You do need to show which systems depend on which services. For example, access control uses primary carrier for cloud off and secondary carrier for sync. Generator supports only life safety loads unless manually switched. That level of dependency mapping is enough to reveal single points of failure and to make attendees choose trade-offs. If a decision requires a deep technical dive, note it as an action and move on in the session. That's the whole point of time boxing.
Segment 2. Running the room. Facilitation often makes or breaks a tabletop. What facilitation techniques do you recommend to keep a tabletop focused and productive?
Start with a clear script and injects. The facilitator owns time and flow, not the answers. Use short injects that escalate. Begin with a carrier outage. Then, after 15 minutes, add a delayed generator transfer. Then introduce a vendor who can't reach a technical contact. That sequencing forces decisions rather than letting conversation spin. Keep vendor reps productive by asking them to state capabilities and failure modes up front, and then limit their speaking to clarifying questions during the event. Record decisions in real time on a visible board so everyone sees the accountability.
What about surprises? Some teams like to keep everything scripted. Others want unannounced elements.
Surprises are useful, but controlled surprises are better. If you inject an unexpected vendor failure without pre-briefing legal or tenant relations, you can create unnecessary risk. Use surprises to test communication and escalation, not to embarrass people. Also, define what's in scope publicly and what's off limits. That protects sensitive operational detail while still allowing realistic stress testing.
Segment 3. Trade-offs and implications. There's a tension between low-impact walkthroughs and live drills. How should organizations decide which to run?
Walkthroughs are the right place to start if you have limited time or high tenant risk. They reveal decision ownership and escalation paths without touching production systems. Live drills are valuable when you need to validate procedures and physical responses, but they require more coordination, maintenance windows, and executive buy-in. Ask, what's the risk of disrupting tenants versus the risk of never testing the change? If a system supports tenant critical services, that leans toward a live drill under controlled conditions, but only after a couple of successful walkthroughs.
And who ultimately owns the outcomes? I hear confusion all the time between facilities, IT, and property management.
Assign ownership explicitly during the exercise and then in the after-action report. For example, owner, facilities, ensure generator transfer procedure is updated by date X. Owner, IT, validate secondary carrier routing by date Y. Owner, property management, update tenant notification SOP and confirm contact lists. Without named owners and deadlines, exercises turn into interesting conversations with no follow-through. That's the failure mode we see most often.
Expert insight and examples. Michael, can you share 2 concise real-world cases where a tabletop exposed a gap and led to meaningful change?
Case 1. In a downtown office tower, a tabletop revealed that the carrier handoff process relied on a single vendor contact who was not reachable during business hours. The fix was simple: documented escalation matrix and a vendor SLA amendment, and it stopped tenant-facing outages immediately. Case 2. During a mixed-use campus exercise, we found that the automatic transfer switch prioritized life safety loads, but left critical tenant IT closets on non-priority panels. The exercise led to a capital project to redistribute loads, and to an interim workaround that standardized manual transfer steps and permissions. Both were inexpensive compared to the potential tenant downtime they prevented.
Key takeaways. Let's close with a practical checklist listeners can apply for their first 60 to 90-minute tabletop. Michael, walk us through the essentials.
Checklist. 1. Define a one-sentence objective and pick 2 realistic, prioritized scenarios. 2. Invite decision makers, facilities, IT, security, vendor reps, and tenant liaison. 3. Time box the session and prepare a facilitator script with staged injects. 4. Map system dependencies at a functional level, not line by line. 5. Record decisions live, name owners, and set deadlines. 6. Sanitize public materials and keep sensitive remediation plans on secure channels. 7. Schedule a follow-up to validate actions before the next exercise.
Metrics to track. Number of named action owners closed on time, number of critical dependencies identified, and mean time to decision during the tabletop. Those metrics turn conversation into budgetable work and measurable improvement. For a simple 60-minute tabletop template, a facilitator script, and a 1-page after-action report template, visit the show notes and resources page at our website. Use the template to run a first tabletop within 30 days and assign owners at the end of the session. That wraps up this episode of Built, Wired, and Secured. Today we explored rehearsing outages with short, realistic tabletop exercises and why clarifying ownership, escalation, and tenant communications before an incident matters to people responsible for planning, operating, and protecting technology environments. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. Until next time, make sure the systems you're responsible for are built to last, wired with intention, and secured for the real world.